Hi, my name's Sue Hendy and I'm a Director of Resilience in Health.
And I'm Kathy Adams, and I'm also a Director of Resilience in Health. We're going to be talking to you today about an approach to bending, not breaking as a health professional. And Sue's going to take you through the first part of the presentation, and then I'll follow on the second half.
Thank you all for joining this virtual presentation. We normally present these concepts in a workshop style, interactive with vignettes and learning from each other. However, this is a bit more one-dimensional and a little bit more didactic, but we'll be very happy to answer questions at the end. So just setting the scene of resilience and what we hope to achieve, and that is that we are going to take you on a journey that helps us to understand what resilience is, how we can recognise resilience in ourselves and others, how we can engineer and develop it, and how we can appreciate why resilience is so important in healthcare for ourselves and for our co-workers, and how resilience can affect that quality and safety. The word resilience is a very familiar adjective these days, and there's a lot of buzzwords around resilience and a lot of resources. We are told it's really important for us, that we should nurture our children and set them up for life with resilience. And resilience in humans is compared to the construction industry, such as building bridges and buildings. And what does that mean? Here in New South Wales, we actually have a commissioner of resilience called Shane Fitzsimmons. I wonder what his position description looks like and what we would expect from him. In this presentation, we aim to make the concept of resilience more tangible and meaningful for you. Describe what it looks like when you have it and how to keep it. We would then like to link this to how a resilience workforce provides safe, quality, compassionate care. Our working definition of resilience is the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, or significant sources of stress. It means bouncing back from difficult and challenging experiences. So it doesn't mean that you're going to avoid trauma or tragedy in your life. It's how you manage that incident, whether it's a professional incident or it's at home in your personal life, and how that experience can indicate whether you do have resilience. Whatever the case, we all need resilience, especially in the healthcare setting, particularly at the moment with all the COVID stresses and strains on us. We also need to work through things like unexpected outcomes, critical incidents, and coping with difficult people. Our ability to support our patients and keep supporting them can be influenced by our personal resilience. So this graphic is very symbolic of what resilience is about. Every one of us, as I've said, will experience trauma or adversity. And some of us will bend like this tree and be able to weather that incident. We may never be the same shape again, but we're still standing and we've adapted to the way that life has now become. Bending into a different shape is not bad or negative, but it actually demonstrates flexibility, agility, and adaptability. These are strong, powerful characteristics that will provide the ability to manage the same or similar events in the future. For instance, if you have to resuscitate somebody and there are parts of it that could have gone better, you will learn from that and you'll be able to apply that in your practice next time. Others with low or no resilience are more likely to break or snap under the pressure. So others, those with low or no resilience, are more likely to break or snap under pressure. So we can use concepts from construction engineering, where we can imagine the stress and strain analogy. The relationship between stress, the load placed on the structure, and the strain that results, how that structure stretches to accommodate. We can assess the relationship between our stress and strain, Do we stretch with the load or strain, or do we break? Being adaptive will support personal ability to experience a situation and to use attributes and characteristics or strategies learned from previous experience to endure the situation. After this, being restorative helps you to reflect on the situation, implement the required changes, and proactively and perceptively recognise what action you personally need to take to recover. And that may be as an individual as well as within the team. Empathy is important in recognising and feeling how another is, especially after a traumatic event. And that's just not the patient, it's also the staff around. Rather than being self-absorbed and introspective, you can also recognise how that's affecting others. So this is Helen Reddy, and some of us are old enough to remember the 1970s and this amazing song. And I won't sing it for you, but the words are, "You can bend but never break me, because it only serves to make me more determined to achieve my final goal. And I come back even stronger, not a novice any longer, because you've deepened the conviction in my soul." When I read that novice bit, I think about all our new nurses, midwives, healthcare professionals, and how they feel in our system currently. Being resilient in a situation can be a self-fulfilling prophecy if you are positive and you come back from an experience in a stronger, more resilient way. And the next time you may have more ability to stretch from the strain. I like this. I'm currently sitting in an outback area in Australia, and it has been very dry, and yet you still see resilience in the nature around us. So what does it look like if I've got it? Well, I'm self-aware about myself. I'm realistic. I'm calm under stress. Doesn't matter what happens afterwards, but at the time I'm calm. I'm empathic. I'm self-controlled and motivated, and I'm optimistic. I know and can be reflected on my limits, and I know how to handle rejection. And those last two are probably quite key to the quality and safety aspects. So what are the signs that you might reflect on in terms of low resilience? So how are your emotions? Are you depressed and moody rather than buoyant and positive? Do you feel victimized more often than not? Do you recognize that you may overreact to a situation that normally you would be able to cope with as a clinician? Do you recognize busyness, being overwhelmed more often than not? Do you feel a lack of hope or joy in the work you do or the people you work with? Do you feel disconnected and not part of the team and valued? Do you feel tired and fatigued and have trouble sleeping? Would you say you're stressed out and have a poor memory? And do you find it difficult to continue sometimes? All or many of these feelings can be prevalent on a day or occasionally when they're prevalent. They can be an indication of low resistance. And we're not suggesting you have to have full resistance every day. We all have days where we have lessened resistance, but it's important to have strategies to overcome that. Without those strategies, then this can spiral down into a very stressful and uncomfortable place where you are perhaps not a safe practitioner. So in our workshops, we do talk quite a bit about the psychology of business. And I have to say, I think some people have got masters and PhDs in this. The list we gave was quite a comprehensive list of indications, and I look for it in my staff when I'm working with them. And when I go around the facility I work in, I often say, "How are you going?" And people will say, "I'm busy." "How's your day?" "Busy." "What have you been up to?" "Oh, I'm so busy." "How's work?" "Busy." It's important for us to reflect on how that looks in terms of ourselves, for others, and the patients. whenever anybody asks me, and I'm in the middle of managing a hospital with a COVID epidemic, I don't say I'm busy. I just say I'm living the dream. The dream sometimes is not always what I want it to be, but I know that I'm living the dream because I'm healthy, I'm at work, and I can make a difference. So I try and relay that to staff, because at the moment, I think if you think of the impact on yourself when this is the answer to every question that's asked, then it's just a negative, stressful environment. The impacts on others. There's quite a lot of research now about cognitive neuroscience that this can actually trigger the avoidance of asking. So, for instance, if Joe's always saying they're busy, you might think, oh, I won't go and ask Joe because he's just always busy. So it's a bit of an avoidance. Impacts on patients. Well, we know in surveys, patients recount often and in adverse outcomes. I didn't like to speak up because the nurses, I heard them, they were so busy. There is a skillful art to having a day of high clinical activity and acuity and conveying to the patients that they are important and you are there for them and that you're not constantly busy. So this research was done in 2011 by King's College, where they surveyed 3,000 nurses in the hospital across different services. And they asked about, what are the things that you're too busy for? It's actually quite shocking when you read this list, and perhaps this has changed since COVID, but I don't think it would have changed for the better from what we're experiencing. So you can see there, comforting, talking to patients, which is the core of patient safety and quality. 78% of nurses felt they didn't have time. So I guess, does your busyness feel like you're running away from something, that you just don't want to engage either with the patients, your colleagues, or within yourself? Do you feel anxious or uncomfortable when there isn't a task in front of you? And when you have a few moments of alone time, do you automatically try to fill it with distractions, or are you able to sit back and reflect? So why is resilience important? Well, this data provides an overview of some of the areas where it's suggested that what we do, we should, what we do not do. I'm going to start that again. Sorry, that's that double negative. So why is resilience so important? This data provides an overview of some of our data where it's suggested that what we do not do that we should, or what we do that we shouldn't, could have negative consequences in the quality and safety of care. Is it that we're too busy to focus on the quality? Is the stress and strain that we experience leaving us at breaking point where we're in survival mode so that we're unable to provide great care? Again, some research from paediatrics around incivility or rudeness. It's not an attribute that should be accepted in our healthcare system. However, at times we're so stressed, have low resilience, that there is a potential for this to occur. So in this study, there was a 52% variance in diagnostic performance and a 43% variance in procedural performance. This indicates that we cannot provide the level of care that is expected where communication styles and behaviours are not acceptable, and this can have negative consequences for patients and for staff. So individual resilience, well-being and the mental health of clinicians underpin a resilient organisation. Human performance is poorer if people are tired, hungry, or if they witness rudeness or coercion. Clinical burnout has a negative impact on patient care. And mental state influences how people deal with the consequences of error. And I think this statement is so important. We need to feel safe to be safe. So improving quality and safety, with a focus on safety to concepts in healthcare, where we examine things that go right has seen some practical successes. Repeated reporting and focus on errors can have a negative impact on clinical performance if there's no balance for positive outcomes. Reporting negative consequences has become a verb in our vernacular. Have you IMS'd that? In the UK, there's been quite a proactive strategy in reporting the positive outcomes as a mechanism to acknowledge performance. There is positive psychology in this strategy, which in turn increases engagement. So in closing, for my part, treat your team like they will make a difference, and they will. And the biggest concern for any organisation should be when their passionate people become quiet. Over to you, Kathy.
Thanks so much, Sue. And Sue's led in nicely by describing what resilience is, what it looks like when you've got it, and why it's so important that we have it, particularly in influencing quality and safety in healthcare. What I'd like to start to talk at the moment is about engineering resilience, how you're going to develop your own resilience. It's a deliberate act or action. It's a positive strategy and one that is required to reverse that potential downward spiral created by low or no resilience that Sue suggested. It is a breaking of patterned behaviours that can create a change in your reactions and responses. So the overall aim of resilience engineering is to deliberately create ways to bounce back from adverse or difficult situations, to create strength to manage personal behaviours that will improve your engagement in similar situations in the future. The risk of us not engineering resilience is that we may fear similar events. We may overtly avoid similar situations and have a fight or flight reaction when you recognise the potential for that situation to occur again. You cannot be confident, capable, efficient and effective without resilience. And you may need to make or engineer that resilience for yourself. Just looking at the words on this graphic here, courage to keep growing is the difference between success and failure. Such an important thing for us to think about, particularly in our professional lives in healthcare. And worthwhile just at the moment, re-looking at those attributes that Sue mentioned before. It's valuable to ask yourself whether you are adaptable to change. Are you restorative after adverse outcomes? And what's your gauge on your empathy level? Without empathy, it's really hard to be able to feel what's happened in situations for others as well as ourselves. So from research methodologies, you may know about appreciative inquiry, quite a newer methodology in comparison to others. But this is a proactive approach to examining situations and responses to situations. We look at why and how did things go right in that situation? What system or process did we have that it was a great catch instead of a near miss? So it's quite a positive flip on what we generally look at. Rather than thinking about what went wrong in adverse events, examine situations where there were positive outcomes and learn from what could be repeated to maximise further positive outcomes in the future. Then share those learnings with others to spread the positivity. Influence change management to include those positive strategies along the way. Aim to be adaptable and flexible overall. And this will strengthen your resilience and thereby your ability to manage those difficult or adverse events in the future. Things do not change. We do. Engineering your resilience is a proactive strategy that can be supported by others, but it really needs to start and continue by yourself. So I'm going to discuss some strategies now about how to engineer this resilience. But I will say to start with, there is no magic bullet. that will assist everyone in the same way to develop and maintain their own resilience. We say it's so important to find your thing, whatever that is. And what works for you may not work for me, and vice versa. Now, the main word in this word cloud is mindfulness, and there's a plethora of research available at the moment where mindfulness and deliberate mindfulness strategies have had a positive influence on workforce and thereby outcomes, particularly in healthcare. Being mindful can include, it doesn't have to be a formal program or strategy, but it can include things as simple as being present in the moment, practicing slow, deep breathing, feeling grounded in the fresh air. But what we will say is whatever technique you are responsive to, it is important to acknowledge and practice and call on it in stressful times. If that's the deep breathing, just see where your belly is or where your shoulders are, where you hold your stress and tension, and breathe it out. Being able to effectively manage your feelings and impulses in a healthy way. Now, I want to just compare reflexivity and reflection. The latter is more of an examination of events that occurred, often in a chronological order, similar to the method that you would do in a case review or a critical incident review. That's reflection. But reflexivity involves a person examining the part that they played in the events or outcomes. Often one's values and beliefs are examined and how they may have influenced the situation. Practicing reflexivity can have benefits such as greater accountability. I recognise my accountability from the part I played in that situation and the outcomes. I actually become more trustworthy because people recognise that I'm prepared to examine what I did in that situation. There's a richness and a clarity to the situation. There may be questions about your ethical stance, your values and beliefs, as I said, but this is all so important, leading towards your personal growth. It is the difference between introspection, as we talked about before, when you have low resilience, which can then lead to victimisation. But looking at for those with low resilience, so this is the flip side. When I'm reflexive and can think about what part I played, I can be more positive in the future. So one other strategy we wanted to talk to you about was resilient rapport. This is a term created by Sue and I at Resilience in Health. And what we believe is it gives better definition and clarity to the relevance of communication and interactions in a resilient person and organisation. When can you use it? Well, any time that you wish to have an effective conversation, you can use resilient rapport. Or any time you want to have a conversation that is potentially difficult, confronting, and where a resolution is desired. We talk about it as like courageous conversations on steroids. So we developed this term from the French, from reporter. And reporter means to carry something back. What I put out to you, you bring back. It's how people relate to each other. What one person sends out, the other sends back in synchronization. It's a way of relating that creates a level of trust and understanding between the two. It's a connection that exists, and it's on a cognitive level. It helps to get one another's unconscious mind to accept and begin to process your suggestions. It assists the other to feel relaxed and open to suggestions, and therefore the conversation will flow more. But one really important point that we make is to be resilient in the moment, especially when the interaction between the two parties becomes difficult or heightened. The temptation is to retreat and run away, which is the opposite to being forward and in synchronization. So remembering this, to stay resilient in the moment, is a really important strategy. The essential elements: mutual attentiveness, having an intense mutual interest in something. You both bothered to have this conversation. Positivity, come to the conversation with friendliness, compassion, and there's that empathy again. If you've come with defensiveness and aggression, you won't be able to have an effective conversation. And coordination, you want to aim for balance, for harmony, and being in sync with one another. There are some enablers to having a resilient rapport. So why do these birds fly in a V formation? This is a really powerful, poignant point to having resilient rapport. So why do they fly like this? Well, the bird at the front, when they flap their wings, air rolls off the wingtips in the form of a rotating vortex. The air is displaced backwards and downwards at the sides. So the birds flying in the formation, they get a free lift. This conserves their energy and makes the flight more effortless and effective. So imagine a difficult conversation where you could use another's energy and motion for an easier journey. You engage in reciprocal behaviour. Try and have matched body language, attentiveness through maintaining eye contact. Don't lose them in the moment. Mirroring each other's emotions, the body language, the tempo of the words in the discussion, and the breathing rhythm. Again, maintaining this synchronized behaviour. The ability to successfully resolve differences depends on our ability to manage stress quickly, remaining alert and calm in those difficult situations. Control your emotions and behaviour. You may be thinking something different inside, but outwardly you're in sync with the other person. Pay attention to the feelings being expressed as well as the spoken words of the other, and be aware of and respect differences. Now, we deliberately chose this image of the rock stacking, and rock stacking carries a spiritual meaning across cultures. The act of balancing stones carries with it a practice of patience and a physical effort of creating balance. Each rock can signify an intention of grace for thankfulness, or offered up for another in need. This is exactly what we want to achieve in one of these difficult situations. Our final concept in engineering your resilience, the final strategy, is emotional intelligence. We consider this to be the key to both personal and professional success in having developed resilience. But emotional intelligence is not fully understood by many people. However, each of the components is more easily understood in isolation. Emotional intelligence is the capacity to be aware of, control, and express one's emotions despite the situation that presents itself. The strain of stress can be managed more effectively when there is self-awareness, self-regulation, and effective social skills. Clinicians with developed emotional intelligence are more likely to bend and not break when experiencing stress. In a critical situation, that is the person that appears calm under pressure because they've got self-regulation. Afterwards as well, they have greater capacity to reflect on the events in a sequential manner, like reflection, but also as well as being reflexive to identify their own behaviour and contribution to the situation. What part did I play in that event? Is there anything that I could have learned from the event in what I did, the way I did it, or what I didn't do? Trying to develop some of these strategies, and particularly your emotional intelligence, we believe that thinking back, things do not change, but we do. So if we think about this, we need to be proactive about where we position ourselves on this comfort zone to growth zone spectrum. The comfort zone is exactly as the name suggests. However, in this zone, there is no additional growth or development. If resilience did not exist before, it will not develop unless you step out of this zone. You will feel safe in this zone and in control. There's little ability, though, for self-development and improvement. Step first into the fear zone. Take a risk. You will no doubt think about finding excuses not to go there. You may lack the self-confidence to be there. You may be affected by others' opinions while you're in there. Go there, feel it, learn, grow, and then it will become more like your comfort zone. Then entering the learning zone is where you will acquire new skills and increase your ability to deal with challenges and problems. There is significant personal growth in this zone. In the growth zone, resilience will become more prevalent, where there is the ability to find or recognise purpose and value in yourself and your role. There is an increased ability to realise aspirations and set new goals. There is greater prevalence of emotional intelligence. This is just a word cloud that we are sharing with you from a group of people who attended one of our resilience and health workshops, where these concepts were discussed and practiced more than we've been able to do today. They felt empowered, renewed. They had the time to stop and be both reflective and reflexive to support personal growth and development. Sharing of feasible and practical strategies to develop and enhance their resilience. So we'd like to leave you with 3 concepts. Being adaptable or needing to adapt isn't a sign of weakness, but more a sign of your strength. Enable yourself to be vulnerable, to adapt, and then reflect on the strength of that conviction. Do you bend or break under pressure? What strategies do you have that could support your adaptability under stress? We need to feel safe to be safe, as Sue mentioned before, such an important and powerful statement. Individuals and organisations could benefit from examining the sense of safety that everyone has in that organisation. Our last strategy for you, we want to share this short video with you. It's about children's learning about resilience, but we believe it's quite simple and effective, and it may leave you with some ideas to hold on to in the future. Let's take a look at this.
I want you to do everything that you can to knock your toy down. Who is the strongest in class? Jerron, come on up, please. I'm going to give Jerron a prop, and he's going to try to knock it off the table. Ready, Jerron? Okay, children, who can tell me what it means to have
make the toy fall down, it'll come back up very, very fast.
Very nice.
Just like to thank you for attending our presentation. We have had quite a fun time making this, and I'm sorry about the outback dog outside, and I hope it didn't distract from your experience.
I'd also like to thank you for coming along to our presentation, and we'd love to discuss concepts further. Our details are here on the slide, but we will also be very happy to take your questions now if there are any from the floor.